It was supposed to be an ordinary night in the Cole mansion, but in a single moment, silence turned into screams. The fire started fast, swallowing the second floor where the baby slept. Servants ran outside, calling for help, but one woman ran the other way. "Stop! You can't go in there! You can't even hear us!" Someone shouted, but she didn't stop. She couldn't hear the words. She only saw the reflection of fire in the nursery window, and she knew the baby was inside. Her name was Leah. She was the maid everyone underestimated, the deaf girl, the billionaire, barely noticed. Yet that night, she was the only one brave enough to walk through the flames. Outside, Ethan Cole, one of California's youngest billionaires, fought to break free from the firefighters holding him back. "My son! Please, someone get my son!" he cried out, his voice cracking with desperation. He had no idea that the woman he ignored, the one he saw as weak, was about to risk her life for his child. Just hours before the fire, things had been peaceful in the mansion. Ethan had spent the day in his office, buried in work and bitterness. It had been 1 year since his wife's death, and nothing felt alive anymore. He lived surrounded by wealth, but trapped in grief. The only thing that kept him going was his baby boy, Oliver, and even that love was wrapped in fear of losing again. Then came Leah, a quiet, humble woman who spoke through notes on her phone and soft gestures. She couldn't hear the world around her, but she listened with her eyes, and somehow Oliver adored her from the first day. Ethan never understood why. To him, Leah was a mistake, a fragile woman in a house that demanded perfection. He didn't believe silence could protect a child. He didn't believe in much of anything anymore. But that night, fate would prove him wrong. The next morning, Leah woke up before dawn. She moved quietly through the halls, careful not to wake anyone. Her steps were soft, her world peaceful, but inside she carried the constant ache of silence. When she entered the nursery, Oliver was already awake, smiling at her. He didn't need words or sound. He simply reached out his tiny hands, waiting for her to pick him up. Leah smiled. She lifted him gently and spun around, her long braid brushing against his face. He giggled without a sound, and for a moment her world felt perfect. From the doorway, Ethan watched. His eyes narrowed. He didn't trust her. Not yet. Later that day, he spoke to his sister, Amelia, in frustration. "I don't understand how you think this is a good idea." "She's deaf, Amelia. How can she take care of a baby she can't even hear?" Amelia sighed, because she understands more than most people who can hear. "Ethan, just give her a chance." But Ethan didn't. He watched Leah like a hawk, waiting for her to make a mistake. During breakfast, he noticed the baby monitor on the table. He picked it up and said, "This tells you when the baby cries. But you can't hear it, can you?" Leah looked at him, calm and steady. She typed something on her phone and showed him the screen. "I see before I hear." "That's enough." Ethan didn't reply. He just turned away, pretending her words meant nothing. But for a brief second, something in her eyes made him hesitate, an honesty he hadn't seen in a long time. Days passed. Slowly, quietly, Leah began to bring life back into the house. She replaced the heavy curtains with lighter ones, letting the sun in. She organized the baby's toys by color, shape, and touch. She even planted white roses in the garden, the same kind Ethan's late wife loved. She noticed things no one else did. The way Oliver's feet kicked before he cried. The way he reached toward the window when birds flew by. She understood him without sound, and little by little, Ethan began to notice her too. One night, he passed by the nursery and stopped. Leah was sitting on the floor, holding Oliver in her arms, swaying gently. She couldn't hear the lullaby playing from the old music box, but she hummed softly anyway. Her voice low, almost like a vibration. Ethan stood frozen. For the first time in a long while, he felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't explain. She can't hear him cry. he thought. But somehow she always knows when he needs her. He left the room without saying a word. But in that silence, something had begun to change. As weeks passed, the mansion began to feel less like a tomb and more like a home. Ethan still spoke little, but his anger had softened. Leah noticed it in the small things. How he started leaving his coffee cup near the kitchen sink instead of slamming it down. Or how he smiled just slightly when he saw Oliver asleep in her arms. But old wounds don't heal quietly. One rainy afternoon, the peace shattered. Leah was changing Oliver in the nursery when the baby suddenly rolled over and fell to the carpet. He wasn't hurt, but his startled cry echoed down the hall. Ethan rushed in, panic and fear turning instantly into rage. He picked up his son, eyes burning with fury. "What were you doing?" he shouted. "You didn't even hear him." "I knew this would happen. I should have never trusted you." Leah froze. The words didn't reach her ears, but she saw them in his lips, in his clenched jaw. She opened her phone and started typing, her hands trembling. Then she turned the screen toward him. "He's safe. You're angry because you're scared. I understand fear better than anyone." Ethan's expression hardened. He snatched the phone from her hand and tossed it onto the table. "Get out. I want you gone, before the night ends." Leah's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Oliver, his small hands reaching for her, and then back at Ethan. She typed one last message and showed it to him before walking away. "You think silence means weakness, but sometimes silence is the loudest scream." She packed her things slowly, stopping by the nursery one last time. On the baby's dresser, she placed a small envelope with a photo inside, a younger version of Ethan's wife, smiling with Leah years ago. On the back, Leah had written a single line: "She taught me to speak with my heart when my voice couldn't reach." That night, Leah left the mansion without a word. Ethan stood by the window, the weight of guilt pressing against his chest. But pride kept him still. The house returned to its silence, a silence far heavier than before. Hours passed. The rain stopped. The world seemed to sleep, but fate wasn't done with Ethan Cole. It was just past midnight when Ethan woke up to the faint smell of smoke. At first, he thought it was just a dream. But then he heard the alarm, the piercing sound echoing through the mansion. He jumped out of bed, his heart racing. The air was thick, the smoke crawling under the doors. Then came the sound that froze his blood. Oliver's cry. "Oliver!" he shouted, running down the hallway. But as he reached the stairs, the world around him turned orange. Flames were spreading across the second floor, feeding on the curtains, devouring the walls. He tried to run through it, but the heat was unbearable. The firefighters had already arrived and pulled him back. "You can't go in there, sir. The roof is about to collapse." Ethan fought them off, his voice cracking. "My baby. My son is in there. Let me go." But the fire roared louder than his screams. Then through the chaos someone appeared, a figure running toward the mansion, small, fast, unstoppable. "Wait! Who is that?" One of the firefighters shouted. "It's the maid!" "The deaf one," another replied. Leah had returned. She had forgotten her necklace, a tiny silver pendant shaped like an angel that she left behind when she was fired. As she approached the mansion, she saw the glow in the windows and the panic in the air. She couldn't hear the alarms or the shouts, but she didn't need to. The firelight told her everything. Without hesitation, she covered her mouth with her scarf and ran straight into the flames. Ethan's heart stopped. "Leah! No, get her out of there!" he yelled, struggling against the firefighters. They tried to hold him back, but he broke free, collapsing to his knees as the fire swallowed the entrance. Inside, Leah moved through the smoke, coughing, eyes burning. She followed the faint flicker of a small light, the baby monitor glowing red in the dark. She found Oliver's crib overturned, the baby crying, terrified. Her hands shook as she wrapped him in a wet blanket and held him close to her chest. She could feel the vibration of his cry against her heartbeat. "It's okay. It's okay," she whispered, even though she couldn't hear her own words. The roof above her began to crack and groan. She turned toward the hallway, only to see flames blocking the way out. She looked down at Oliver, tiny, helpless, and made her choice. She ran through the fire. From outside, Ethan watched in horror as the windows exploded outward. "No, please, no," he screamed. Then, out of the smoke, he saw her. Leah stumbled through the doorway, clutching the baby in her arms. Her clothes were torn, her skin blackened with soot. She handed Oliver to one of the firefighters before collapsing onto the ground. Ethan ran to her, holding her limp body in his arms. "Leah, stay with me, please!" She couldn't hear him. Her lips moved faintly, but no sound came out. Her eyes fluttered shut as the sirens wailed around them. For the first time in his life, Ethan prayed, not for money, not for success, but for a miracle. "Please, God, let me hear her voice just once." The hospital smelled of antiseptic and silence. Ethan sat in the waiting room, motionless, staring at the floor. His hands were black with soot. His white shirt burned at the edges, his eyes empty. Hours passed, but time didn't move for him. All he could hear was the echo of his own words haunting him. "You think silence means weakness." He had said that to her, and now her silence might be forever. The doctor finally appeared, his tone serious but calm. "Mr. Cole, she's stable. For now. Her lungs suffered from the smoke, but she's strong. She kept breathing even when her body shouldn't have." Ethan stood, unable to hold back the emotion. "Can I see her?" The doctor nodded. He walked through the hallway like a ghost, every step heavier than the last. When he entered Leah's room, his heart broke. She looked fragile, her face pale, her lips dry. Her hair still smelling faintly of smoke. Machines surrounded her, beeping in slow rhythm. The only sound in the room. Ethan pulled a chair beside her and took her hand. It was small, trembling but alive. He stared at her for a long time before whispering, "You saved my son. You saved me. And I never saved you." A tear slid down her cheek, even though her eyes were closed. He brushed it away gently. "If you can hear me somehow, please come back just once. Let me tell you what I should have said the first day I met you." He lowered his head, resting it beside her hand, and whispered the words he had buried inside him for months. "I'm sorry." Then, for the first time in days, the faintest movement came from her hand. Her fingers curled slightly, brushing against his. He looked up, eyes wide as her lips moved weakly. "Is he safe?" Her voice was barely audible, soft, cracked, but real. Ethan froze. Tears filled his eyes. "Yes," he said. "Oliver's safe. You did it?" She blinked slowly, a small smile forming. "Good. I promised her I'd protect him." Ethan frowned. "Promised who?" Leah pointed weakly to the photo on the table, the one she had left behind before the fire. Ethan walked over, picked it up, and turned it around. On the back were faint words written in blue ink, "For the woman who gave me voice through silence." It was his late wife's handwriting. Ethan looked back at Leah, realization washing over him. "You knew her?" Leah nodded faintly. "She taught me to speak with my hands, to never give up on kindness." And then, as if the heavens were listening, Ethan whispered, "You kept her promise, and you gave me something I never deserved. Faith." Over the next few weeks, Leah recovered slowly. Her hearing returned in fragments, low sounds, muffled voices, the rhythm of footsteps on the floor. Every sound was new, overwhelming, beautiful. Ethan visited her every day. He brought flowers, sometimes white roses like the ones she planted in the garden. Other days he just sat beside her in silence, watching the sunlight move across her face. One morning she noticed something different. Ethan wasn't wearing his usual suit. He looked lighter, human. "I closed the office," he said simply. "For now. I realized I've been running from life. From myself," she smiled faintly. "Silence helps you listen." "Doesn't it?" He nodded. "Yes, you taught me that." Later that day, Ethan took her to see Oliver. The baby giggled as soon as he saw her. She held him, laughing softly. For a moment, it felt as if the fire had never happened. As she played with the baby, Ethan just watched. He realized that in a world full of noise, this moment, the simple sound of a baby's laughter, was the most precious music he'd ever heard. That night, when he drove her back to the mansion for the first time since the fire, she stopped at the gate and stared. Half the house was gone, but part of it still stood. "You're rebuilding it?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "But this time it won't be a house full of memories. It'll be a home." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Then let it have silence too. It's where love learns to breathe." He nodded, and for the first time since his wife's death, he truly smiled. Days later, as the workers repaired the mansion, Ethan invited Leah and Oliver to the garden. The new flowers had started to bloom, white roses, bright and alive against the dark soil. Ethan took a deep breath. I used to think wealth protected me, that money could shield me from pain. But when I lost everything, it was your silence that saved me." Leah looked down, her cheeks warming. "I didn't save you. I just reminded you that you could still feel." He smiled softly. "Then maybe that's what love really is, feeling even when it hurts." For a moment neither spoke. The world was quiet again. Then Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver necklace, her angel pendant, cleaned and shining. "You left this the night of the fire," he said. "I thought I'd lost it forever." He placed it gently around her neck. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something neither needed to say. Oliver giggled nearby, pulling petals off the roses. Leah turned to look at him, and Ethan whispered, "You gave him a future. And maybe you gave me one too." She looked back, smiling through tears. "You gave me a voice, not with sound, but with love." He reached for her hand, and for the first time, neither of them felt broken. Block 8. The ending and message months passed. The mansion stood again, different, smaller but warmer. The air no longer echoed with loneliness, but with laughter, life, and peace. Leah worked there still, but she was no longer the maid. She was family. Every morning she would walk into the garden with Oliver, who was learning his first words. She taught him signs for love, thank you, and home. And when Ethan joined them, she smiled at him with a softness that said more than words ever could. One evening, as the sun set, Ethan stood by the window, watching them. He whispered to himself, "She taught me that silence isn't empty. It's full of everything that matters." Leah looked up from the garden, their eyes meeting through the glass. She signed something to him, 3 small words. He smiled, understanding perfectly. "I love you too." Narration closes with reflection. Sometimes the loudest miracles happen in silence. Sometimes the quietest hearts carry the deepest strength. And sometimes love doesn't need to be heard to be felt.